Welcome to this tutorial on layer basics in Adobe Photoshop. If you don't already have the starter file open, please download that and open it up in Photoshop so you can follow along with me. It will make understanding the basics of layers a lot easier. I wanted to start with this kind of pre-made file. If you look over here on the layers panel over on the right, you will see 1, 2, 3, 4 layers, and those are 4 very common layers used in Photoshop. So I wanted to have something kind of created with those already there so that there's a visual when I kind of explain what they are. So let's get started. Let's get an understanding. At the base level, layers are essentially stacks of acetate, which you probably saw in the mission if you followed that from the class website. This idea of plastic see-through stacked on top of each other with different things added. So perhaps at the bottom of the stack, which is this background layer right here, you would have your picture. And then you would stack things on top of them way back in the day, and that would alter the look of the picture underneath. We're talking, before computers and stuff like that, right? So first thing to think about is stacking order. Anything that's higher in the layers is on top in the picture. So for example, Grand Tetons, that is a text layer, T for text. And the text is above this gradient circle, which is this ellipse, which is the next layer, right? So visually it's on top, thus it's higher up in the layers. And you can rearrange. I can drag that down below ellipse, and you can see now that blue gradient ellipse covers my text, and I'm just going to go ahead and drag that back. That's a key thing to understand, right? Stacking order, and you'll learn that as we go along, but things higher up are going to show up on top in the picture. If you drag a picture onto the Photoshop icon, or you open a picture directly, it's going to set it as a background layer. If you create a new blank document and then add a photo in later, the photo would be on its own layer and the background layer would either be transparent or white depending on settings. One kind of trick with the background layer is, you notice I can't move that one, right? I can move the other ones. I cannot move that one. It's locked. And you can see this lock symbol right here. Current versions of Adobe Photoshop, all you need to do is click to unlock it, and then it will automatically rename it Layer 0, which I don't like. I'm going to double click on that and call that Photo, just to be better organized. If I wanted to make that the background layer again, I could, is it right click? I haven't done this one. Nope, not right click. It's going to be up here under Layer, New, and Background from Layer if I wanted to go back to background. All right. So up here in your menus you have Layer, and you have all kinds of things. We may mess with some later as we go in the menu, but I want to dedicate what's going on in the panel. Menu we might cover later and experiment with stuff. So we have a text layer. Text layer. It is right here. It says something about effects, all right? So that means there's a layer effect, and we'll learn about those in a later tutorial. But what I added was a drop shadow to the text, this little blue outline. So if I turn that off, you can kind of see on the picture to the left, that drop shadow goes away. I can also turn the text layer off altogether. With the eyeball, correct? Nice and easy. This layer is a shape layer, and you can see based on that symbol right there, it is a shape layer, a vector shape, all right? And again, I can turn that on and off, and I just drew a simple circle over here, right? Shape tool, and there's a gradient on it. This layer is an adjustment layer. It's a non-destructive layer. And simply what it did was, this was vibrant. I just made the colors pop more. So if I turn this off, like look in this region, kind of dull, I turn it on, makes it pop a little bit more. There are so many adjustments, we'll cover those later. What else is here? I can come up to right here and I can filter based on the type of layer. So that's an adjustment layer. If I click on this, I can filter and see only adjustment layers. I click it back on, I see everything. Text layers and vector or shape layers. I can even do two of a kind and then just simply come back. Another thing I might want to do is, as your Photoshop files become more complex, your layers can get really long. You could have hundreds of layers. So you want to make sure you name them, and that's really easy, right? If I were to come in and double click on the text for ellipse 1, I might instead call that gradient ellipse, just to be more precise. But nice and easy to change the text or the name of that layer. Also, as they get more complicated, you may want to group layers. So Grand Tetons, the text, and the shape, they kind of go together, right? The shape and the text, it's kind of like a logo, like a really simple logo, but a logo. So I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click and highlight both of these layers. And since they're similar, I'm going to group them together. I'm going to come down to the bottom of the Layers panel, and there's a thing that looks like a folder, and that's Create New Group. And I could double click on that, and I can call that logo, for lack of a better term. And if I open it up, you can see those layers are in there. Like I said, as it gets bigger, more complicated, stuff like that helps to organize and keep your Layers panel a little more clean. If I wanted to duplicate something, perhaps this background layer, I can drag it down to the new layer icon and it will make a copy. All right, another quicker way to do that, and I'm going to delete it because I don't need it. Another quicker way I think of, and I use shortcut keys to be efficient, I want to jump that up to a new layer. So think about what jump starts with, Command J for jump, and I jumped it up to a new layer. Really quick way to create a new layer, jump. Delete that. So what we have here on our interface, background layer with a lock, adjustment layer, shape layer, notice by that symbol, a text layer, T, with layer effects, and you can see the effects here. You can see I have a group, right? I also have the highlighted thing is a layer, right? And whichever is active that I'm working on is highlighted. And I could turn the visibility on or off of a group or a layer. And there are some other functions here that we'll talk about as we go along. We can lock certain things to adjust only parts of a layer. But that gives you a pretty good overview, hopefully, of layers and how they work with one another.